Good morning and welcome to another episode of Burning Questions. Today we welcome Chelsea Green from Encon. Chelsea, could you tell the viewers a bit about yourself and Encon?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Quelfire. Thank you, Adrian, for having me here today. Really excited for the topic we're going to cover. A little bit about me. So I work at the Encon Group. I am a fire protection manager based down in the southeast, and I support none of our fire or some fire branches and some non-fire branches. But yeah, I support the staff in terms of training, in terms of getting them to chat with manufacturers, inquiries that come in from their customers, etc., as well as having my own ledger of key accounts, majority all fire protection contractors. I've been doing that for just over 2 and a bit years now. And previous to that, I worked at Hilti for 7 odd years in South Africa and the UK. Yeah.
Good. Today we're going to cover off mainly training and competency. So why is ongoing training critical in the construction industry?
Yeah, I definitely think, training in itself, kind of you can see with the way construction is going, it's constantly evolving. Things that were tested 5 years ago may not be what's compliant today. So you constantly have new test data coming in. I mean, we already see towards the new EN standards now that are coming in. It's more towards a European standard rather than a British standard. So we see these kind of evolvements that are going. We also note that, safety, the stakes are really high, right? You want to save lives. So it needs to be top priority. We need to ensure that the people that are installing the works are fully competent, the designers know what they're actually putting into the building, and the contractors are installing it correctly. So yeah, I think it's about consistent competency and training to kind of build the whole picture.
I couldn't agree more. And when you go out and do training sessions with contractors,
Yeah,
you pick up that how vital training is.
yeah,
Um, training in fire stopping, but general training on the things that surround fire stopping as well, the other
yeah.
trades, etc. So, yeah, the training per se is constant, is a constant need, isn't it?
There is,
Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, you would be, I see you often. Obviously, you come through to Encon, you do it with our contractors, our customers, and all that as well. So I think it's really, really key that it's consistent. You keep that kind of consistent training, it's ongoing, it's not something that happens once off. We constantly have new players that enter into the market, new people to train, and it's kind of something that we need to maintain and not just kind of tick box, you've been trained, off you go.
yeah. It's not something you just do once and then
Yeah.
that's it. It's done. And we have some customers who will actually, book in
Hmm.
regular training sessions for their staff to
Yeah.
keep them up to date with things that may change.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's not always, a lot of contractors may also find that because they've done it this way, it's always going to be done that way, right? It's something where you want to make sure that you can break out of that mold. It's not always with what we've always done was correct. It may be 100%, but there's always new ways of doing things, and knowledge share. We all want to make sure that this is a collaborative approach, and we want to ensure that feedback from the sites gets put through into the training, to kind of close that loop, and ensure that we get the best out of it, really.
No, it's good. That's very important. What do you think are the biggest gaps in training that there is in the industry currently?
Um, I think a little bit about responsibility, taking accountability. Where is the training kind of coming from? A lot of the time it gets pushed down the chain as such. Designers will think, oh, the installers can deal with that. And installers will think, oh, well, my supervisor will check that. And then the supervisor thinks, oh, it's the contractor's role, So it definitely gets pushed down in that kind of respect. And I definitely think that it kind of needs to take on each individual has a part to play in the training, to kind of bridge that gap. And everybody does need to be involved, as I mentioned a little bit earlier about that collaborative approach. You've got to make sure that your employer really wants to push it with you. You as an employee are really motivated to upskill yourself. And I mean, you want to do it right, and you want the quality to be right. You want the client to be happy. And most importantly, you want to save lives. You want to protect people. That's the point. Yeah.
I think that's good. I think your point about every party taking their responsibility is very key
Yeah.
because things do get pushed down the line. And I can see that from a certain point of view. If it's not in your role, you're going to push it down to the next sector, whatever it is. But really, as you say, it's so important that everyone in that who has to do with it knows what should be happening the whole way through the process, really, whether it be the architect or the main contractor or the fire stopping contractor, the dry liners. They all need to know what's involved so they are aware of what requirements have to be put in place.
I do agree. And, like if you look at online now, ASFP have like a competency pathwork sort of framework. There you can kind of find a bit of like evidence-backed training. So it doesn't matter if you're a distributor, manufacturer, an installer, whoever, different parts of the construction phases or wherever you kind of lie, there is specific training that allows you to kind of say, okay, this is where I am, this is where I'm benchmarked, this is where I should be, this is what I should know. So it is, I think, becoming better. I do think that we're on the right path, but it is definitely up to companies themselves to make sure that this is the kind of direction that they're going to kind of keep that push going forward.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd say things are definitely getting better.
Yeah.
There's a lot more thirst for training
Yeah.
out there, which is great to see. Obviously, we're at Grenfell,
Yeah.
which is a tragedy. How do you think the perception of training has changed since the Grenfell tragedy?
Yeah, so I mean, Grenfell, of course, was a catastrophic sort of tragedy. I mean, but I do also think it was a little bit of like a wake-up call in that sense, because, you see with what was installed wasn't up to scratch, it was poor quality. It was also a lot of weak oversight. It wasn't just the installers that had the issue of physically getting trained, but it was the designers, the clients, the contractors, main contractors, everybody who was involved, cutting corners, not looking over everything, the details of testing, the products. There was so much. I mean, even the fire brigade, there was so much wrongdoing in that it kind of led to that ultimate tragedy. But I do think that it's now kind of given a push more into training from out of the nice to have and a kind of need to have now. You
Yes.
have to have it. It's something where you've got to have more of an evidence based competency. You've got to kind of say, well, this is what I've got. It's not just in attendance on a course, it's evidence backed. This is what we can do, this is what we can provide, and it's a verifiable sort of training record as such.
Yeah. I think it was described as like a Swiss cheese scenario, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where when you cut it, all the holes line up and everything that could have gone wrong that day went wrong, didn't it? But yeah, as you say, what has changed is that what goes in must be tested and know that it works rather than, we think it might work.
Yeah, exactly. I think that you've also got to build confidence, within your staff, that they also feel like they know with what to do, and it's not just something where they're reading out of a booklet or reading out of an install guide and they're unsure and the supervisor will help me out. You've got to build that kind of confidence to say, okay, I can do this work without having my supervisor come and check on it. You know what I mean? I
Yes.
feel confident to do it. And if I do need to escalate something, I'll do that
Yes.
when I need to.
Yeah, and know that what they install in is tried and tested.
100%.
And there's some documentation behind it that can back it up, what they're doing.
Exactly. And that's
So
the way it's going, right? You would
yeah,
know, being a
absolutely.
manufacturer, everybody's
Yeah.
looking for tested evidence.
Yeah.
They're not going to install something out of a tested scope.
No.
Or they don't want to, should I
No,
put it that way?
no.
And rightly so. It should be with what you've tested, standard details. This is what is going to be applied on site because it's trusted and it's going to work.
I was just thinking the other day, going back a couple of years, I think it was, I often used to go out and see fire stopping contractors, and the amount of times I was asked about engineer judgments, for example, or technical assessments. And of course, I always came back with the Quelfire narrative that we don't do engineer judgments because they're not tested. But that has changed so much. Today, when I go out and see fire stopping contractors, I virtually never get asked about engineer judgments, which tells me that there's been that change in the industry, that the need for or is tested.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. And it is a good thing because engineering judgments, it is a judgment.
yeah,
It's out of test.
correct.
So
Yeah,
100%, I
yeah,
think, the message is kind of coming to contractors where it does need to be something that's set in stone. It was tested. We can rely on it and kind of go from there because a judgment is an assessment
yes,
at the
it
end of
is.
the
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
What role do you think employers and contractors play in fostering a culture of continuous learning and training competency?
Yeah, so I think employers, they kind of set the tone, for training. I think that, if an employee sees training as an investment, they will of course be motivated. They will take it seriously. It's not almost like a tick box exercise where it's, oh, you need to do XYZ training and off you go and you have to do it. End of story. It's something where the employer said, listen, this is the time, take it, schedule training into your workload, for example, make it part of your day. So if, for example, you go and see contractors, they've scheduled you in part of their day so that it's linking to a project, for example.
Yes,
It's something that's being planned, it's an investment for them, for their future, to kind of ensure that the job's being done well, that they know with what they're doing, they feel confident, the competency is there, and then ultimately the quality is there. So you want to make sure that the employees also feel that it's valued,
yeah,
and it's not just something where they're like, here we go, let's go, this is a disruption out of my day.
yeah,
It needs to be something that they actually want to do and they feel like they are actually contributing as well to society and making buildings safe.
yes, quite.
Yeah.
And for the employers, it's so important for them, isn't it? Because it's really the legacy of their company. If they're doing a quality job time after time, that goes in their favor, of course, from a company point of view. But also, if their staff are installing stuff incorrectly, that could go against them in a fairly dramatic way. The whole thing could escalate very quickly in the fire industry, couldn't it? So
100%. And I think even that with what you're mentioning now, that's what's so important to have this kind of feedback culture as well. So whoever's working at site level feeds back anything, whether it feeds back to the contractor, whether it even feeds back to the manufacturers like yourselves, distributors, everybody who's kind of involved with the supply chain. You've got to get with what's happening on site back up the chain so that you know with where to work on, what to focus in terms of products, what to focus in terms of training, and ensure that that is a continuous collaborative sort of approach to training, because it just can't be one-sided. Because I look at all of these really beautiful
perfect.
yeah, perfect
Yeah.
installations behind me, and I definitely know it looks different on site because you've got different people installing it, you've got access issues, there's a lot of extra layers that are different to with what's been put on a
Yeah.
design piece of paper. So I do think that that feedback is a closed sort of loop and is fed back up the chain. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's the feedback is absolutely critical. I did a training session to an M&E contractor last week. I learned a lot from that session.
Yeah.
To see
Yeah.
things from an M&E contractor's point of view. We always hear it from the fire stopping contractor's point of view, which is obviously obvious. I mean, that's obvious. But to see things from the M&E contractor's point is very, very interesting. To see that why certain things happen on site is because this is the way they operate. So I was able to say, out of interest, did you realize, for instance, that the spacing was a requirement, or that the certain size annulus was a requirement? No, we always just put a 50 mm hole in the wall. Okay, well, that might need to change. But they didn't realize that. And I didn't realize that that was their protocol, if you like. So that feedback back from sites, from different industries, if you like, is so
Yeah.
important to actually getting the training correct,
Yeah.
and getting the overall solution correct at the end of the day.
Yeah, because it could be, multiple contractors talking to each other, doing the same thing.
Yes.
You pick up these anomalies as you kind of go, and okay, this is something that's being done. Let me actually set it right. This is how it is meant to be installed as per install guidelines, etc. So I get that. I think that it's important, and you're already seeing it in the role that you do
Yeah.
with your customers and us, etc. So yeah.
It's slightly off the subject, but it comes back down to what we do a lot of at Quelfire in terms of early engagement, working with the main contractor, the architect, the dry liners, M&E contractor right at the early stage of a project and getting the getting the solution arrived at early doors. That really is training.
Yeah.
In that sense.
100%, yeah.
In its own right. So it's such an important part of a project to get the correct solution arrived at right before maybe even a spade goes in the ground, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think the gateways are already there,
Yeah.
helping that process go forward with the golden thread, right? You got to make sure that this is done correctly before we move on
Absolutely.
to the next phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it's become so important as the training is because, of course, the Building Safety Act,
Yeah.
that's the requirement.
100%.
Yeah.
Rightly so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, there's different courses out there. IFE offer a number of different courses, don't they?
Yeah.
Could you touch on what the different courses IFE offer and an overview of those?
Yeah, 100%. So IFE, Institute of Fire Engineers, we, Encon specifically, focus between levels 1 and 3. We've got over 100 people within Encon that have been trained up for level 1 and a few with level 2. And then myself, I've got level 3 as well as the director at Encon, Neville White, so for fire protection. So I do think that it's really important to kind of ensure that your staff at least have bits of understanding of fire protection because they're selling it, right? I mean, we're a distributor. I'm just talking about a distributor's perspective. You've got manufacturers, installers, etc. All of the different kind of players in this kind of realm of that make up the entire construction team need to be they need to be trained, they need to be competent. So yes, I do think IFE is definitely one way to do it. They've got a very rigorous kind of way of doing the kind of qualifications. And if you've done level 3, you know your arm almost falls off after 3 hours of writing. So yeah,
Well,
it
was
was.
your room had all the post-it notes on there?
Oh my word, yeah, all the sticky notes. So that's just a way of how I obviously study. You know, I like something very visual. I had each section in post-it notes. But yeah, I mean, it worked for me, but I mean, everybody's different. I think the biggest thing, I mean, when I joined Encon, had a bit of fire protection experience from my days when I worked at Hilti. But level 3 really, it got me to a much better, I'm not going to say that it was the be all and end all of my learnings because you learn a lot from sites, from contractors and
Sure.
that. But
Yeah.
it really set the tone in terms of me understanding about fire protection and just the basics, like with what to kind of see, what sort of applications you're kind of expecting to kind of see on site. So put theory as well as what's happening on site, like practice all together and built a big picture for me and helped me, yeah, understand a lot more about fire protection. And now helps me at least deal with inquiries and that comes in on a day-to-day basis and helps our staff as well, you know, ones that are going through level 1s, level 2s, and that I've got at least hopefully some wisdom to pass on to them. But yeah, every day is a school day for me, so I'm always learning. So
Sure.
yeah, I do think it's really important that we do things like the IFE courses.
Sure.
It's great to do level 1s and level 2s. Like I say, the introductory level 1 is so important, but I felt like there I was kind of already at with Hilti and that, so I thought, you know what, I kind of want to do all the applications.
Yeah.
Because level 2 I'd have to like almost pick certain things that I would want to know and then kind of study those. So I felt like because I'm in passive fire protection as a whole, I mean, there's even active fire protection to be fair. But yeah, it's an entire encompass of knowledge that I kind of wanted to pick up, and it definitely helped me do just that.
Yeah. Good. That's very interesting. How long did it take you out of interest?
I did kind of work out the hours at some point. It was something like 200 plus hours of like studying.
see.
So whether that was on the weekends, whether it was after work, you know, it was a lot of kind of time reading, making notes. Luckily, I did it over the summertime, so it was a bit easier being outside in the garden at points, so it's not so dreary in the office. So yeah, no, it was good. I did pick up a lot, like I mentioned, and it did take a lot of time. There was a lot of time invested, but well worth it because I passed the first time and I was
You one of
very
the
nervous.
18%, weren't you?
Yeah, 18%. So when I saw
Wow.
that come out, I was like, oh no. But yeah, no, I
Yeah.
was very
So well done.
happy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good. There's a lot of talk about competency construction. What does competency really mean in a practical sense?
I mean, yes, it's what we've just spoken about now. It's the kind of knowledge aspect. So things that you pick up from physical qualifications, but it's not just that. It is fully encompassed with experience, skills that you pick up. People who have been doing this for years and years, they've got a wealth of knowledge, more knowledge that you can fit in a booklet. And that mixed with a qualification builds competency. It's those elements working together, knowledge, skills, experience, everything like that together builds up a competency. And it's so difficult almost to measure. I think that is a challenge, because how do you measure somebody's competency if it's not a qualification? How do you measure a skill or knowledge, like, previous experience? How do you almost measure that? And I think that that's where you're now seeing things like the ASFP competency framework. These things are coming in because there's almost now benchmarking tools where you say, okay, do you know this? Do you know how to do that? And it's not just a tick box, oh, yeah, 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 on a piece of paper. It's actually, I can install this. I can install this behind me, kind of thing. Do you get with what I mean? I mean,
Yes,
if you have to give me this bat and say, Chelsea, can you install this? I can tell you on paper, that will not look like that when I'm done with it. There's going to be sealant everywhere. So exactly. So
Yeah.
it's the experience and the knowledge, skills all combined,
Yeah.
that builds up competency. In my view, I think that makes a big part. And then accountability, you got to
Yeah.
be accountable with what you provide, your
Yeah.
own work.
Yeah.
Are you installing it correct? Have you done your own diligence in terms of with how you should be installing it? Is it installed as per installer's guidelines? Have you read the test data as a designer? So there's so many parts that kind of play into a building makeup, because I mean, everybody's got a different way of reading a detail. Do you know what I mean? They think of it, oh, I've done this before. I know what to do here. I know what to do here. And then they've passed on that knowledge to someone else. I mean, it could be all good and well, 100% it could be, but there are things that could be bad habits, for example, that get
Yeah.
passed down. So it's so important to do these kind of refreshers. It's competency is not ever a one-off, or not should I say that training is never a one-off. It should always be maintained. It's a refresher is so important. It's a consistent collaborative approach that is ongoing. It will always be ongoing because details change, regulations change, everything kind of changes as we kind of go into this new gateway process, different manufacturers doing new testing. So of course, you've got to make sure that the people who are installing it are also, fully comfortable and know with what they're installing.
You often find that with installers, that they do things because that's the way they've always done them.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that actually that's not the correct way to do it.
Yeah.
So that constant refreshing is so important. And we always encourage, fire stopping contractors, keep up to date with the training. If your staff haven't had training for maybe 2 years or 18 months, have a refresher, because details may have changed, or the way of doing things may have changed. And if you don't have that, you just carry on doing things wrong.
I do think it provides that kind of evidence, and it's a kind of commitment, a commitment for a business to, of course, it's a professional commitment to say, you know what, we are invested in training. This is something that's where we're going. It needs to be, we want to do this because we know we want to make buildings safe. We want to ensure that we do the quality of work and that the standard is there. You can't just push it to the back of your head and we'll do this later, or oh, we got to do the, should we? You've got to do it. It just has to be done. You have to be confident. You've got to be competent in what you're doing so that the buildings are built to the correct safety standards, and that people are safe to actually live in them. They live a happy life. They're not stressed about something like an old house or Grenfell happening to them.
Yeah. I was trying to think, I heard someone the other day who just done a fire stopping project.
Yeah.
And he is complimenting his employee who had just done a good job on one room, I think it
Yeah.
was. And he said, well done, you just saved another life today.
Yeah.
And that was that's made your day worthwhile. You've done a good job, you've saved another life.
You break it down to that, it is that, right?
That's right. What do you think are some of the barriers that professionals are facing to actually accessing good training?
I think there's a few barriers. I think time is a barrier. As I mentioned earlier, teams that are working on sites are usually under a lot of pressure. At the moment how the deadlines are, everything's been pushed back. So, to all of a sudden now, sites are like, oh, do we have time to do this? But you've got to do it. You've got to make it part of your schedule. So I think that's one barrier. Cost as well could be a barrier. I mean, I know contractors like yourself, you do offer this free of charge, but there is a cost to the contractor in terms of not installing for that day. So there is a cost element that it could be quite expensive for individuals or even very small contractors, for example, that can't afford to take time out of their days or whatever it may be. It also could be an awareness piece, from in terms of with what's out there. Not all contractors know with what's available on the market. I mean, we're sitting here talking about competency, but there's a list of different kinds of courses, different bodies that get involved with trying to upskill the market. Do they know what's available for them within the industry is the question. So I think awareness does play a good part in it, and I do think that that's something that potentially now this competency pathway may help kind of bridge the gap on. But yeah, I think that it also kind of comes down to a bit more of a what we can do, how we can kind of promote training and how we can kind of add that value, whether it be online, whether it be practical. We need to kind of provide a more blended sort of solution for contractors or designers, whatever it may be, that you're going to be picking up some training via you pushing yourself to do the training online, whether it be in person with yourselves in a boardroom, whether it be on sites where you actually physically installing the products. I do think it needs to be a bit of a mix, and building in that to the time and schedules
Yeah.
of the contractors as well. Yeah, I do think there are a number of barriers.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd say cost is probably possibly one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
We get a lot of requests for training ourselves, as you know. And one of the first questions that crop up is, what is the cost? A lot of people don't realize that we offer the training free of charge, and it's probably maybe my fault for not making it clear enough. But the fact that they think there is a cost might hold companies back from actually requesting it. And also the time thing is a massive factor as well. Trying to get a number of employees from different sites to a central location to undertake training can be a massive operation, for some bigger companies.
Yeah, and they've got multiple teams, loads of
right.
gangs. How do they bring everybody central? So
Yeah.
it's a much bigger scale that they'd have to work on.
But again, there are companies that offer the training online, so it can be done from those different locations that the teams are at. But also it comes back to what you said about what is the cost to them to not do the training, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It could lead to a lot of very expensive rework through stuff not being correctly done. And we've seen that time and time again, where stuff is not installed correctly. It's been picked up by an assessor or an inspector, and they're having to go back and redo it. Whereas had they done the training, they would have done it right in the first place. So that's how the cost to not doing it, if you like.
It's two parts, exactly.
Yeah.
That kind of cost that you're not seeing, it's a disastrous cost. You want to avoid something like, I'm not going to say Grenfell on that again, but you want to avoid something like that, because that is hugely costly. It's costly on lives, costly financially. All of these different parts come into play. So exactly, I think it's there's two sides to the cost elements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. It's very helpful. If you could change one thing about how training is approached in construction today, what would that be?
Kind of briefly mentioned it as we've kind of gone. It's a shift of a mindset, right? It's a mindset shift from training as just a tick box exercise to training as an investment, investment in safety and investment in quality, making sure that the buildings are done as best as they could possibly be, to ensure that your clients are happy, to ensure that people are safe, and ultimately avoid any kind of disastrous happens that could be. So I do think moving away from that, building these kind of refreshers within your schedules, making sure it's not a one-off training is so vital. And I think working with how we've kind of spoken about throughout this podcast is this collaborative approach. It'll help you do it, making sure it's across your full supply chain. It's not just the installers who are learning how to install it. It's not just the designers who are learning about the details. You've got to have that cross feedback. You've got to be talking to one another and sharing the information both ways so that you can ensure that the training that is developed correctly, and it's designers, contractors, installers all learning together to build a training matrix at the end of the day. So I think it's all a shared responsibility ultimately, and you want to ensure that it's not just an individual's burden, it's an entire industry wide approach to ensure it's been done correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. And that's, yeah, I agree. They will have different training, but principles don't change. So they stay the same wherever you work in, they'll stay as common. But yes, there will be different elements that come into different training. Yeah.
Exactly. And like IFE is a really good point of contact. You could be like, okay, here we go. This is what we've learned. All the basics are going to stay the same because these are the basic principles of fire safety. And if you've learned that, wherever you fall in the supply chain, you're still going to refer back to that. And it builds a nice base.
That's good. Thanks, Chelsea. And it just makes me think, we always recommend the use of third-party accredited installers, people who are IFC, Blue Sky, FireS, BM Charter for fire stopping accredited, because that gives the client or the main contractor the confidence that those teams have actually done the training. They've
It's
got the
evidence
knowledge.
backed.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. They've got the knowledge, the skills, the competency to actually install the products correctly. And FireS and IFC, etc., those bodies, they're very good at doing regular audits,
Yeah.
which is ensuring, and those are practical as well
Yeah.
as on paper, which ensures that those companies are keeping up to date with the training that they should be doing. And the interesting thing is the training that we do on Quelfire products and on our details, etc., at the end of that training, we'll actually give them a certificate to say they've attended that training. And that certificate is actually an important part of what goes towards the IFC audit or FireS audit, whatever it is. Thank you, Chelsea, for coming along today. I think it's very, very helpful, insightful session.
Yeah, it was really, really good. I enjoyed talking about this. I think it's a really good topic to speak about, and I really do hope that whoever does watch this, you are pushing your employees to do it. You're pushing back at your employer. This is what I want to do. I want to be part of this movement. We have to be better at upskilling every part of the supply chain so that buildings are safe, so that people are safe, and ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a movement together. So yeah, I hope that does help, and it's been a really, really good chat. And thank you, Quelfire and Adrian, for the time today.
That's good. 100% back you up on the latest point. Yeah.
Thank
This is
you.
excellent. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.